ladies and gentlemen. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that every time you begged for attention, chased validation, texted first out of desperation, or played along with someone's emotional games, you were actually handing over your power piece by piece, quietly, invisibly, but entirely. Now ask yourself, how many pieces are left? Most people spend their lives stuck in this loop, confused, drained, and afraid to walk away, yet deep down, they know this isn't strength, it's survival, and survival isn't living, it's tolerating. But what if, right now, you decided to flip the script? What if you could learn to live without begging, without chasing, without sending another, just checking in message that chips away at your dignity, without playing the exhausting game of pretending you don't care when you do, or pretending you do when you actually don't? And what if I told you that the freedom you're starving for isn't in the response you're waiting on, it's in the decision you haven't made yet? Hold on, don't relax just yet, because the hardest part isn't walking away, it's staying away with your head held high when everything in you wants to turn back, and that's exactly what we're about to confront. Self-worth is proven through silence, not pursuit. In a world that teaches us to constantly reach out, to chase after what we want, and to make ourselves seen, we often forget the quiet strength that comes from restraint. Silence isn't passive. It's not weakness. It's not indifference. It's a powerful statement, a declaration that we know who we are, and we don't need to scream for acknowledgement. When someone truly values themselves, they don't beg for love, validation, or attention. They understand that their worth doesn't increase or decrease based on someone else's ability to see it. There's a kind of dignity that can only be found in stillness. When someone ghosts us, rejects us, or gives us mixed signals, the world tells us to fix it, to talk it out, to win them back. But self-worth doesn't play tug-of-war with confusion. It doesn't dance with inconsistency. It knows when to walk away, when to stay quiet, and when to let go. Silence in this way becomes a form of self-respect. It's the decision to not explain ourselves to people who've already made up their minds. It's the strength to not chase those who made us feel like we're too much to love or not enough to keep. We live in an age where everything is fast, instant messages, quick replies, constant updates. The pressure to respond immediately has created a culture of emotional dependency. We're scared of being misunderstood if we don't reply, scared of being forgotten if we don't reach out. But real self-worth has no such fear. It doesn't fear the silence because it doesn't measure its value by someone else's response time. It understands that time spent in silence is often the time where clarity is born. The more we learn to sit with ourselves, the less we feel the need to be validated by someone else. Silence is also a test, one that reveals the intentions of others. When you stop texting first, when you stop chasing, when you stop filling the silence with desperate energy, the truth surfaces. If they care, they'll come. If they don't, their absence will speak louder than any excuse they could give. This is where most people break. The silence feels like abandonment, like rejection, but it's not. It's redirection. It's life removing those who never saw your value in the first place. And yes, it hurts, but it's also the moment you discover just how much power you've been giving away. You don't have to chase people to prove you matter. The right people won't need to be reminded of your worth. They'll recognize it the moment they meet you. And those who don't, let them go. Your silence is your filter. It separates those who are genuinely interested from those who are only entertained. Pursuit often becomes a mask for fear of being alone, fear of being forgotten. But here's the truth. Being alone is far less painful than constantly proving yourself to people who treat you like an option. When you stop pursuing, you create space. Space for real connections, for genuine interactions, for love that doesn't need to be chased because it's already running toward you. There's also something deeply empowering about choosing silence over reaction. When someone disrespects you or plays mind games, the instinct is to respond, to confront, to fix. But self-worth doesn't need to react to everything. It observes. It understands that not everything deserves a reply. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Not because you don't care, but because you care too much about your peace to let someone disturb it. Silence is the refusal to lower yourself to their level. It's saying, I see your behavior, and I choose not to engage. In moments of silence, we reclaim our energy. We stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even offer us a bandage. We stop explaining ourselves to people committed to misunderstanding us. We stop showing up for people who never show up for us. This is not arrogance, it's healing. It's maturity. It's understanding that your value isn't determined by who stays or leaves. It's anchored within you. It's unshakable. And every time you stay silent instead of begging, every time you hold your ground instead of chasing, you reinforce that truth within yourself. You become someone who doesn't just talk about self-worth, you embody it. You become someone who no longer entertains temporary people with permanent energy. You become someone whose silence makes more noise than their words ever could. And in that silence, you find your voice, not the one shaped by fear or longing, but the one rooted in truth, in power, in peace. Attention earned is more powerful than attention demanded. In a world saturated with noise, where everyone is shouting to be noticed, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing that louder means better, faster means stronger, and more visibility means more value. But true attention, the kind that's rooted in respect, interest, and genuine curiosity, cannot be forced, faked, or manufactured. It must be earned. It comes not from begging to be seen, but from becoming someone who is worth seeing. And the moment you stop trying to be everywhere for everyone is the moment you start becoming undeniable to the right ones. Demanded attention is fragile. It hinges on urgency, manipulation, and often performance. It's the kind of attention that evaporates the second you stop clapping, the second you stop pleasing. It's the attention that disappears when you're no longer entertaining or useful to the other person. This type of attention might feel good for a moment, it might fill a temporary void, but it never lasts. It's conditional, shallow, and almost always built on insecurity. When we demand attention, we place our self-worth in someone else's hands. We say, please see me, instead of saying, I see myself. The problem with chasing attention is that it becomes addictive. The more we get it, the more we need it. It feeds our egos but starves our souls. We start crafting versions of ourselves that we think people will like, curating our lives for approval, and performing for love that should have been unconditional. Over time, we forget who we are beneath the mask. We become slaves to the reactions of others. And yet, the irony is this: the more we chase attention, the more we repel the kind of people we actually want to attract. People who truly matter are drawn to authenticity, not desperation. They're not looking for noise, they're looking for presence, purpose, and depth. Earned attention, on the other hand, is powerful because it's rooted in truth. It's not won through gimmicks or games. It's not manipulated or tricked into existence. It's a natural result of being who you are fully, unapologetically, and consistently. When you focus on becoming someone of value, someone with character, integrity, passion, and purpose, attention finds you. It lingers, it deepens, it transforms from curiosity to connection. People remember you not because you shouted the loudest, but because you spoke to something real within them. You didn't ask for their focus, you inspired it. There's a quiet confidence in those who don't need to demand attention. They walk into rooms and don't rush to be seen, yet they are noticed. They don't dominate conversations, yet their words carry weight. They don't constantly post for validation, yet when they speak, people listen. That kind of energy cannot be faked. It comes from knowing who you are, from doing the inner work, from choosing long-term value over short-term applause. When you know your worth, you don't need to announce it. Your presence does the talking. And when others feel that energy, they can't help but pay attention. One of the reasons earned attention is so impactful is because it creates a foundation of trust. It signals that you have something meaningful to offer, something beyond appearance or performance. It tells the world that you're not here to impress, you're here to express. And that expression, when it's real, resonates more deeply than any flashy display ever could. It moves people, it changes them. And in return, it earns something far greater than attention. It earns respect, admiration, and loyalty. We often underestimate the power of consistency in earning attention. It's not always about grand gestures or sudden success. Sometimes it's about showing up again and again with authenticity and purpose. It's about the quiet ways you stay true to your values, even when no one's watching. It's about the way you treat others when you have nothing to gain. That's what people remember. That's what sets you apart. In a world full of people trying to be interesting, being interested, truly interested in life, in others, in growing, is what earns real attention. And when you finally receive that attention, you'll notice something different about it. It feels effortless. There's no anxiety, no second guessing, no fear of it vanishing. Because you didn't beg for it, you built it. You didn't chase it, you attracted it. It came to you because of who you became in the process, not because of how loud you shouted. And that is where real power lies, not in the fleeting flashes of spotlight, but in the steady glow of authenticity that can't be ignored. Emotional detachment is not coldness, it's clarity. It's the calm that follows chaos, the stillness that comes after you've felt every high and every heartbreak, and finally realize that peace doesn't come from controlling outcomes, it comes from releasing your need to. Detachment isn't the absence of feeling, it's the mastery of it. It's standing in the storm of someone else's drama, expectations, or manipulation and choosing not to be pulled into it. It's the quiet understanding that you can care deeply for someone and still walk away if staying means losing yourself. People often confuse detachment with indifference, but they are not the same. Indifference says, I don't care. Detachment says, I care, but not at the cost of my own well-being. When you become emotionally detached, you stop reacting to everything. You stop jumping at every text, overthinking every silence, or interpreting every action as a personal attack or validation. You begin to observe instead of absorb. You begin to see things as they are, not as your fear, your hope, or your past would have you see them. That is clarity. That is power. Because once you stop being ruled by your emotional impulses, you begin making decisions from a place of strength instead of desperation. You learn that not every battle needs to be fought, not every person needs to be understood, and not every situation needs to be fixed. Emotional detachment is what happens when you've finally had enough of your peace being on the line every time someone else has a bad day. It's when you stop tying your happiness to someone else's validation, stop measuring your worth by how well you're received, and start realizing that your emotional world is your responsibility alone. It's not a wall, it's a boundary. A quiet refusal to be a dumping ground for other people's chaos. A strong inner knowing that you are not obligated to explain yourself just to be liked, to argue just to be right, or to stay just to be accepted. There's a beautiful kind of strength that grows inside a person when they stop clinging. Detachment teaches you to hold everything loosely, not because you expect it to leave, but because you know you'll be okay even if it does. Relationships become less about control and more about connection. Love stops being about possession and starts being about freedom. You no longer love someone to keep them, you love them because it's who you are, and if they leave, your love doesn't become a failure, it becomes a chapter. That's what clarity looks like. That's what detachment gives you. It allows you to see people for who they are, not who you want them to be. You stop projecting your potential onto people who keep showing you their patterns. You stop trying to read between the lines or rewrite the ending. You trust the signs, the energy, the behavior. You stop making excuses and start making peace. Detachment isn't walking away in anger, it's walking away in truth. It's saying, I see this clearly now, and I no longer choose to participate in something that costs me my inner balance. When you practice emotional detachment, you take your power back in a world that constantly demands your reaction. People may try to guilt you, call you distant or heartless, not realizing that your stillness is not a sign of apathy, it's a sign of healing. You've felt enough. You've carried enough. You've lived through enough chaos to know that peace is too precious to trade for temporary attention or approval. You no longer need chaos to feel alive. You no longer need emotional roller coasters to feel connected. Detachment gives you the clarity to choose stillness over storms. You start to see that your value is not tied to how much you sacrifice or how emotionally available you are for others at the expense of yourself. You no longer feel the need to over-explain, to prove your loyalty, or to beg for basic respect. You let people be who they are, and you let yourself walk away when their energy no longer aligns with yours. That's not cold, that's wisdom. That's not distance, that's self-preservation. And maybe the most powerful thing detachment gives you is the ability to love someone without losing yourself in the process. To show up with open hands and an open heart, but also with open eyes. To give but not deplete. To care but not collapse. To connect but not cling. Because when your heart is clear, your boundaries are firm, and your peace is protected, you realize that emotional detachment isn't the absence of love, it's the presence of self-respect. Walking away is sometimes the loudest message you can send. It speaks when words have failed, when explanations have been ignored, and when your value has been questioned one too many times. There is power in silence, but even more in the action of removing yourself. In a world where people are taught to prove themselves, to hang on, to fix what's broken even when it's shattering them, walking away is often mistaken for weakness. But nothing requires more strength than choosing yourself over approval, choosing peace over chaos, choosing to end the story rather than begging for a new chapter in someone else's book. People underestimate the gravity of departure. They think it's just distance, a disappearing act, a final move in a game. But it's not about the distance, it's about the decision. It's the decision to stop arguing for your worth. It's the moment you realize that staying silent in your pain is louder than screaming your truth to someone who's not listening. Walking away is an act of emotional intelligence. It says, I am done negotiating my value. I will no longer lower my standards to meet your comfort. I don't need to prove to you why I matter. Sometimes people only start listening when there's nothing left to hear, when your messages stop, when your presence fades, when your energy is no longer available. Suddenly, your absence becomes louder than your presence ever was. It creates a silence that forces reflection. And while it's never your responsibility to teach someone your worth, walking away often does that better than any conversation could. Because when you're always available, always forgiving, always trying, people get used to it. They forget that you have limits, that your love has a boundary, that your patience is not eternal. But the moment you walk away, that illusion shatters. Walking away doesn't mean you didn't care. It doesn't mean you gave up. It means you cared enough to give chance after chance until it was no longer healthy to do so. It means you stayed long enough to know that staying any longer would cost you too much. You stop being the person who is always understanding, always waiting, always holding on. You become the person who knows their breaking point, who respects their own peace, who refuses to be the only one fighting for something meant for two. It takes courage to walk away, especially when your heart still feels attached, when you still have questions, when you still hope they might change. But clarity often comes in the absence of noise. When you leave, you give yourself space to see things as they are, not as you wish they were. You stop justifying behavior that hurt you. You stop filling in the gaps with potential. You stop pretending inconsistency is just someone being confused. Walking away lets the truth catch up with you, and sometimes that truth hurts, but it also heals. There's a silent kind of growth that happens when you remove yourself from what was slowly breaking you. You begin to rebuild the parts of you that were ignored, you reclaim your voice, you rediscover what you deserve, and eventually you stop wondering why they didn't see your value and start asking why you stayed so long with someone who didn't. That's when walking away becomes not just a message to them, it becomes a message to yourself. A promise, a shift, a turning point. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone has earned the right to hear your heart, to be in your energy, to share your time. When you walk away, you are drawing a line in the sand. You are saying, this is the price of my peace. If you can't afford it, you don't get to stay. That boundary is not cold, it's sacred. Because self-respect isn't just about how you treat yourself. It's also about what you allow others to do in your presence. And when someone consistently shows you who they are, and that version doesn't honor who you are, the most powerful thing you can do is leave. Walking away is not about anger, it's not revenge, it's not about making someone miss you, it's about protecting your soul. It's about acknowledging that staying would only teach them that their behavior was acceptable, and you are no longer willing to be part of that lesson. It's about choosing growth over comfort, even when it hurts. Because deep down, you know you were made for more than waiting, begging, explaining, and hoping someone will rise to meet you. In the quiet after you've walked away, there is sadness, but there is also strength. You start to see that the real loss wasn't you leaving them, it was them losing you. You start to heal in spaces that once held confusion. You begin to feel peace in places that were filled with anxiety. You realize that the loudest message you ever sent didn't come from confrontation, explanation, or desperation. It came when you stood up, turned around, and never looked back.